Trustee Matthey.
Trustee Matthey. Ward 1, Trustee Matthey. Okay.
Trustee Bolin.
Here.
Trustee Milawambwe.
Mboka. Êtes-vous ici? Ward 3. Mboka. Okay.
Trustee Emig.
Julie. Okay. Oh, crap.
No, there's not a mute there. There's not a mute there.
I wonder if we're going to recess for about 10 seconds. Okay, we're good. That was less than 10 seconds. Good to come in under budget. Okay.
We're going to try this again.
Try this again.
Trustee Matthey.
Here.
Trustee Bolin.
Here.
Trustee Milawambwe.
Here.
Trustee Emig. Trustee Emig.
Julie.
Here. Here.
Trustee Painter.
Here.
Trustee Black.
Here. Can you hear me? I'm here.
Trustee Crable.
Yeah, we heard you, Scott.
Here.
Trustee Bray.
Here.
Mayor Renner. Trustee Renner.
Here. And also we have Trustee Carrillo.
She is not present.
Trustee Carrillo? Okay, thank you very much. We have our open hearing, and we have a proposed fiscal 2021 budget. Are there any comments related specifically to the township? Seeing none, I'm going to call this public hearing closed. Thank you very much. And it is 5:35, so I'm going to go ahead and call the regular meeting of the City of Bloomington Township to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Trustee Matthey.
Jamie?
He's not unmuted. 1 second.
Here.
Trustee Bolin.
Here.
Trustee Milawambwe.
Here.
Trustee Emig.
Here.
Trustee Painter. Trustee Black,
Here.
Trustee Crable,
Here.
Trustee Bray,
Here. Here.
Trustee Renner.
Here. Thank you very much. And Trustee Carrillo is not here?
She is not here.
Okay. Thank you very much. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And if those of us who are here will rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you very much. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now we have a budget ordinance that is in front of us. Is there a motion by anyone to approve this budget ordinance, which is a recommendation that be passed? Oh, okay. Well, you can ask after. Make it. Okay.
Trustee Crable would like to make that motion.
Trustee Craybill? Trustee Craybill?
So moved.
Is there a second? Trustee
Mayor, I'll
Manley?
second that.
Thank you very much. And we have a question by Trustee Boland.
Yeah, when I was looking over the new expenses, I noticed that there was a rather large increase in car and equipment by several $1,000s, and I just would like an explanation for that.
Do we have someone, Mr. Gleason or someone, does anyone have an explanation for that before we move forward?
This would be Deb. Go
Oh,
ahead,
Deb, I'm sorry, Deb, are you online?
Yes, I am.
I'm
What
sorry,
fund are you
Deb.
looking
Go
at?
ahead.
Trustee Boland, what fund are you looking at? General Town, Evergreen, or?
It's the general town fund FY 2021 budget draft.
Am I able to speak? Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay, is that under supervisor's expense or assessor's expense? I'm not sure what line item you're seeing that in.
Well, the page I'm looking at right now is the supervisor's office, I guess. But there was another page that showed the same expense, if I can find it.
Computer contract services, is that what it is?
No, it was car and equipment. Let's see.
I see equipment, car expense has 3,000, 4,000. Is
Yes,
that what you're saying?
yes.
We have expenses that have increased due to using our own vehicles, and we're just accommodating for that because we do not have a company vehicle.
Okay. And then the equipment is basically staying the same?
That equipment is, yeah, I don't see any change in that.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Anything else? Madam Clerk, would you then call the roll, please? This is on the motion that is on the floor to approve the budget.
Trustee Matthey,
Yes.
Trustee Boland,
Yes.
Trustee Milewambwe,
Yes.
Trustee Emig,
Yes.
Trustee Painter,
Yes.
Trustee Renner,
Yes.
Trustee Black,
Yes.
Trustee Crable,
Yes.
Trustee Bray.
Yes.
Okay. And we did not still have no response from Trustee Carrillo.
Correct.
Okay. Motion carries. And at this point, we move to public comment. Is there any public comment on township matters only?
Trustee Renner, we did actually have someone register online through the link, a Joe Holland. However, he has not called in and he is not present.
Okay. Just to clarify, Joe Holland, are you out there? Apparently not. Okay. We did try. Thank you very much. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Boland. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Bray. Is that correct, Kim?
Yes, I'll second that motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. All in favor, signify. Oh, excuse me. We need to do roll call on that? Even adjournment? Probably so. Okay. We'll unmute everybody and say all in favor. Anybody? All in favor? Okay.
Aye.
Yes. Aye. Yes.
Great.
Confirmed.
Aye.
Anybody want to stay on the line? Any no's?
Pass.
Shush. We're adjourned. We will see you for our next exciting episode in 16 minutes. Thank you. We're starting in 1 minute, just as a notice to everyone. Thank you. Okay. We're starting in about 1 minute, just so everyone knows. 5 up, less than that. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting of this Bloomington City Council to order. If everyone will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and then remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Maffey?
Here.
Councilmember Bolin? Here. Councilmember Milwambwe?
Here.
Councilmember Emig?
Here.
Councilmember Painter?
Here.
Councilmember Carrillo?
Here.
Councilmember Black? Councilmember Black?
Here.
Councilmember Crable?
Here.
Councilmember Bray?
Here.
Mayor Renner?
Here. Thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and start with the proclamation that we have that's listed on your agenda under 5A. It's a proclamation, Child Abuse Prevention Month, April 2020. Whereas the City of Bloomington believes that the future prosperity depends on our youth. Whereas the City of Bloomington believes that nurturing relationships and stable environments improves the well-being of all children. And whereas the City of Bloomington believes that the community should be a safe and comfortable place for children, parents, caregivers, families, and all others. And whereas preventing child abuse and neglect is a community problem that depends on the involvement of people across the community to bring about solutions. And whereas the month of April has been designated as Child Abuse Prevention Month, and the Child Protection Network, Prevent Child Abuse Illinois, Children's Home and Aid, and other providers, area providers, are providing much-needed services and solutions throughout McLean, Livingston, and DeWitt counties. And now, therefore, I, Terry Renner, Mayor of the City of Bloomington, do hereby proclaim the month of April 20th, 2020, Child Abuse Prevention Month in Illinois, Bloomington, Illinois, and I urge all citizens, community agencies, faith groups, education institutions, medical facilities, and businesses to increase their participation in efforts to support children, parents, caregivers, and families, and all others, thereby preventing child abuse and strengthening our community. And I assume this is a proclamation for public presentation, and there's no one to accept this at this point.
That's correct. We'll be mailing it to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to then move right along to public comment. We have 2 people registered for public comment who are on site, and then our clerk will read the people who have emailed us public comment. And I'm going to start in the order of Steve Seiss. Is that correct? Cease. I apologize. And then Scott Steinley. Scott Cease, please. Steve. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I can mess up anything, can I? Okay.
All right. Hello, my name is Steve Cease. I'm a West Side resident from Ward 6. Usually I can't make the meetings because of work, but given the circumstances, I'm not working as I normally do, but I'm happy to be here regardless. I'd like to address some concerns I have with the changes to Chapter 12 of the City Code in regards to the emergency powers of city officials. Before I do get to those concerns, I want to commend the city officials for adding checks and balances to Chapter 12 to the City Code and the emergency powers within it. Ensuring the mayor, city manager, and mayor pro tem all need to agree to enact emergency powers is a wonderful idea. Many other communities have given city officials unilateral power, and I thank you for recognizing the dangerous precedent that that sets. That said, I do still have some serious concerns with the changes to Chapter 12 and Section 7.3, which outlines the powers of the city manager during an emergency. In particular, item A6 gives the city power to control ingress and egress to and from a disaster area, including all property within it. That essentially gives the city the power to control entry and exit to private property. In a pandemic situation, the disaster area is literally the entire city. Item A7 gives the city the power to suspend or limit sales or the transportation of specific products, including alcohol and firearms. Not only do these restrictions fail to keep people healthier from COVID-19, but I don't see any possible emergency situation where these powers would be appropriate. Finally, items A10 and 11 give the city the power to ration and price control goods and services. While well-intentioned, price controls and rationing are incredibly ineffective ways to deal with supply issues during the event of a crisis. They encourage hoarding, generally do the exact opposite of their intent. We need to look no further than the City of New Orleans' response to Hurricane Katrina, in which price controls and rationing caused much more suffering and death than what would have occurred otherwise. From what I can gather, these changes are lifted almost directly from a state statute, giving government certain powers during emergencies. While the state might give the green light to municipalities to exercise these powers, it's not mandatory for our city to do so. Legal permission to do something does not make it moral, does not guarantee that it's the correct course of action, and is not good justification for that action. I urge the council to move the changes to Chapter 12 of the Code to the regular agenda so the council can amend the motion and omit the above items from Chapter 12. Should the council still approve the changes as written in the consent agenda, I would appreciate consideration of enacting the emergency ordinance tonight without those items listed above. I do not envy the position any of you find yourselves in right now. The people of Bloomington are looking to you for leadership in a time of crisis. We're looking for action. But as our representatives, you must make sure the powers given to elected officials and appointed city officials are appropriate. You have the opportunity to demonstrate your leadership tonight by omitting these specific items from the ordinance and choosing not to enact them at this time or remove them from the city code indefinitely. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Steinley.
Yes, my concern is in granting a few people the authority to make the decisions that are going to impact the entire city. I mean, as the gentleman just said before, that, you know, there is absolutely, positively no reason that just a few people can make those decisions. It's bad enough that the city of Bloomington's home rule, you know, what are we going to have now? Just a few people, a handful of people making those decisions? And, you know, I take offense to this, I really do. What if, you know, why can't we address the roads? You know, rather than a few things that are really not essential that I see the city doing all the time. And, you know, I take offense to that. I mean, just like my recycling, that was missed. I just happened to see the truck on the other side of the street. They said, it's not your day. I said, well, the truck's out in this area. So somebody dropped the ball there. You know, and with these new trucks, they'll do one side of the street, come back and do the other side. They did the opposite side. And I thought I heard a truck. I looked out, and sure enough, there it was. Now that is an inefficient way to run the city. It really is. When they are out in that area and they ignore the people. So I called on Friday. They said they'll be out Monday. They didn't come out Monday. They were out Tuesday. And so I sat out there all weekend. In the event they did come. You know, I don't, you know, why don't we get some competition in here? Have another private hauler compete with the city? Or is the city saying, we're going to do it our way? I think I made my point. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to move right along to a consent agenda.
Your Honor,
Oh,
or Your
oh,
Honor,
sorry,
Mayor
I
Renner.
apologize.
Sorry, if we could.
Sorry, that's true. I forgot. Thank you. Our clerk is trying to keep me honest, which I know is tough. There are people you wanted to announce that did send public comments. Please.
Thank you. So with our process for public comment this evening, we made available a link on our website so that people in advance of the meeting could go in and register for public comment and then be able to call in to make that public comment. We did have one person register. His name is Joe Holland. However, he has not called in for his opportunity to speak. With that said, we had the two men present earlier, and there were a variety of others that emailed public comment into our city clerk email address. All of those emails have been provided to the council members, and the council members that are present have also received them in paper form. And those, if you'd like to see them, they're also available on our website. If you go to the meeting agenda calendar for tonight, there's a link there where you can also read those public comments at your convenience. With that said, the list of people who submitted by email are Chris Allison, Dave Kobus, Janice Stotler, Radiance Jeanette, John Vogel, Elizabeth Blankenship, Monica Schnack, Ryan Roberts, Connie Beard, Ronald Slagle, and Debbie Spenceley. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this point, we'll move to our consent agenda, and I'm going to ask if there are any items that any members of the council want to have removed from the consent agenda, and we will go ward by ward. So if you have something you want to have removed, let me know, and I will record you, and the clerk will. If not, then you can go ahead and pass, but we're going to go ahead and do it that way rather than having multiple people speaking at once. Ward 1, Alderman Matthey, do you have anything you want to have removed from the consent agenda under item number 7?
Yes, I do, Mayor. 7C is in Charlie, 7E is in Edward, and 7N is in Nancy.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councilmember Boland. Nothing. Let's see. Councilmember Milawambwe. Councilmember Milawambwe.
I do not.
Okay. Councilmember Emig. Councilmember Emig. Do you have anything to remove from the consent agenda? Okay. Councilmember Painter. Do you have anything?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Carrillo. Councilmember Carrillo. Jen?
Hello? Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah. Anything you want to have removed from the
great.
consent
Okay.
agenda?
Yes, I'd like to remove items C like cat through G like Gary, and I like igloo through O like Omar.
Okay. So just to recall, just to repeat this, Jen, correct me, items 7C through G, items I through O. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councilmember Black.
No.
Councilmember Craybill.
Nothing further.
Councilmember Bray.
No.
Okay. Thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and start with Councilmember Matthey, items 7C, E, and N. I'm going to go to you, and if you would...
Excuse me, Mayor.
Oh,
If we
excuse-
could finish the consent agenda vote for the items that were not
Oh, I'm
pulled,
sorry. Yes, that's correct. Could we have a motion to approve the items that have not been approved? So that would be items 7A and B, and then H, but an H, I guess. And then what's after O? P through Y. Do we have a motion to approve those as presented that have not been pulled by the council?
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Councilmember Boland. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Councilmember Matthey. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Matthey,
Yes.
Councilmember Boland,
Yes.
Councilmember Milwambwe,
Yes.
Councilmember Emig, Councilmember Emig,
Julie?
Councilmember Painter,
Yes.
Councilmember Carrillo,
Yes.
Councilmember Black,
Yes.
Councilmember Crable,
Yes.
Councilmember Bray.
Yes.
Thank you all very much. Okay, that carries, and I'm going to turn to Councilmember Matthey, who pulled items 7E, excuse me, C, E, and N. Councilmember Matthey, you have the floor.
Hello?
Jamie? Yeah.
Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. All three of these items are pulled for pretty much the exact same reason. I've had a bunch of constituents that have reached out to me, and they want to know if now is the right time to be spending money on some of these things. So starting with item 7C, which is for replacing 5 dump trucks. You know, the dump trucks themselves have mileage on them that is, I would consider, fairly low for a commercial truck. I know we've got some issues with some rusting going on in the beds, but you know, just I guess coming from the perspective of what money can we save not knowing what next year's budget's going to look like, I'm just curious that with these trucks, can we get 1 or 2 more years out of these before we replace them, push them a little bit closer to, you know, the 7D is squad cars, and those all have 100,000 miles on them. So can we push these dump trucks usage closer to that 100,000 miles of usage on them?
Okay. I'm going to, rather than attempt to answer that question myself, I will go ahead and turn to City Manager Gleason to make a comment.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I think Alderman Matthey lumped all three of his together, correct? And I think the response for any of the consent agenda items tonight, I would respond this way. This is something that we're very aware of, you know, trying to strike a balance of what may come next given this pandemic. Also being very aware of the reserves that we have in place, but trying to not put us in a position that you know, for the day after COVID-19 is over, that we've compounded the different purchases and some of the financial issues that we could have. So it's one that it was not without little thought or consideration. And if we need to speak specifically to why now, I would have Kevin Cothe, the Public Works Director, respond to those specific questions. But I also say this, you know, while I say that there was a fair amount of, you know, care and consideration, you know, trying to grab our crystal ball on what's going to come next with pandemic, COVID-19, if it is in fact the council's wish we'll do whatever. We'll shift. We'll adjust. But I'm going to return to my original comment that we were prepared for this kind of question, but we felt at this time it prudent. We're very early into this situation, and at the same time, that's exactly what the cash reserves are for, is if, we get into a situation, an unexpected situation, in some cases, cash reserves can be used for that if we have a sustained and dramatic shortfall in the revenues we're collecting.
It would also seem that one of the things, again, that I would observe as a mayor is that if we have things that are pressing needs, if not urgent, but at least pressing needs, it may not be the best time to help slow the economy down. But did you want to have Kevin Kofi speak on this? Is he on the line?
What I would ask, Mayor, and any of the council members, if there are specific questions about the condition of the vehicles or the equipment that we have further questions, I will call Kevin.
Okay.
Otherwise, if my answer's satisfied, maybe we can move on, but that's entirely up to you guys.
Okay. Do we have any motion on this, either to approve or disapprove items 7, C, E, and N at this point?
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yes.
Councilmember Carrillo actually has her hand up.
Okay. She has her hand up. Let's go ahead and go to Councilmember Carrillo.
Yeah, I mean, I guess can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so in addition to the items that Councilmember Mathey named, I also pulled a number of things off of the agenda. Based on my conversations with constituents, this is not a time that any of them are doing non-essential spending, and I think us at the city should follow suit. I totally understand the thinking behind, what's the day after we're done with this pandemic look like, and we don't want to have a whole bunch of things backed up. But to me, we're a couple of days into shelter in place, and we actually don't know how long this is going to last. And some more hopeful people are saying this could be done in a couple of weeks. I'm personally not that optimistic, and so I would like to make a motion that we table all non-urgent, non-essential spending, including items C through G and I through O.
Point
Okay.
of order.
Yes, Councilmember Boland.
We're discussing the points that Alderman Mathey pulled.
That's correct. I mean, at this point, we are focused on C, E, and N, and as I understand, Jen, then your motion would mean that we would not fund C, E, and N. Is that correct? Because we can't go any further until we come to you.
Right, that's exactly what so yeah, I would make a motion
so
to
we do have a motion
to table those
on the
three
floor
items.
to table items C, or to disapprove, essentially, items C, E, and N, 7, C, E, and N. Is there a second to that motion?
I need for a second to lower all hands and then ask for you to do that again, because we had several that had raised their hands to speak. So
Okay, at this point, if you would just keep your hands raised if you want to second the motion that has been made by Councilmember Carrillo, which would be to table items 7, C, E, and N.
And you have Councilmember Crable.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Thank you very much. At this point, Councilmember Boland, did you want to speak on that?
Well, I have some questions. I have a tendency to agree with Tim, and the first question I have is, how many of these items that we're talking about are in the current budget and have funds allocated?
Actually, what I would do is call Kevin Cothe or possibly Scott Rathman to respond to that. But in fact, some of these are budgeted for FY20, the current fiscal year.
And the other question I have would be probably you or Scott Rathman also. We're very close to needing to approve next year's budget. We have 2 more meetings. Is there an opportunity down the road to amend the budget and pull things off?
Yes,
Okay.
we can, and
Okay.
maybe an expanded response to that. And again, the wishes of the council, the majority of the council, is definitely what we will follow. But part of this consideration for putting these items, and I'm almost positive all are FY20 items that are already budgeted for. You know, this is very similar to where we were at the year before and probably the year before that, where the expenditures at the tail end of the budget, you see these kinds of long consent agendas in March and April prior to the end of the fiscal year. But also another component of this, and while not entirely defined, nor do we know the amount, there is federal and state aid that's being stood up, which is another consideration why we advance these in the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Madam Clerk.
At this point, Kevin Cothey is unmuted if you'd like to
Kevin,
respond.
if you can hear, if you'd speak to this.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The items in question are in the current year's budget, and they are, in general, a lot of them are design contracts that we want to get projects underway. Of course, some of them are, purchases for vehicles and so forth, but they're all necessary. For instance, the dump trucks are critical to snow plowing and salting operations. And, when you look at the total dollars spent on maintenance, it's almost half of what the cost of the new vehicles are.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. At this point, I think we're going to go ahead and we have some hands up that want to speak. And it needs to be on C, E, and N. Otherwise, your comments are out of order. So at this point, we're just focusing on 7, C, E, and N. And so go ahead, Madam Clerk, if you go ahead and call.
Councilmember Matthew.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I still had a whole bunch more questions. I guess not a bunch more questions, and so I was actually not looking to get them all looped together at the same time. But that's fine. Like I said, this is actually the same question. I think that both C and E for me would have been questions regardless of whether or not we were having COVID-19 issues right now or not. I think that, that we like to replace things sometimes before we need to replace things. So I guess I still would have had the same questions with the replacement of those vehicles. And then N is a completely different thing in the fact that it's for the next phase of the Locust Colton CSO elimination project. That's been a project that's been ongoing now for, 15 years, I think, at this point, and still probably has 10 more years before we're done with that one. I don't even know what the impact of pushing that one back is. So I am not prepared to lump that one in without, I kind of wanted Kevin to say, if we push this back off for a year just to see what happens, where do we go from next? What's the long-term impact of that? Is there already work scheduled for 2021 to be done after we get this design phase done? And I don't know what the long-term impacts of not approving N are.
Okay, so just want to clarify, have you communicated with Kevin about any of these issues beforehand?
I sent an email, but it was admittedly late in the afternoon.
Okay. Yeah, so Kevin, I wonder if you could respond specifically to N, and then we can see whether or not Alderman Matthew wants to separate these motions. But Kevin, if you could respond to item 7N about whether or not we should take a hiatus, I guess, from moving forward with Locust Colton.
The Locust Colton project did start over 10 years ago, but we've been on hold trying to get the loan funding for Phase 2, which we had hoped would have been funded last year by the EPA state revolving funds, but we're still waiting for our loan to come through. This Phase 3 design is to get everything ready so that we can apply for a loan, knowing that the waiting list for loans is sometimes a couple years. And we do have in our EPA permit to operate the Locust CSO a deadline of 2030 to get everything done and closed out. And we have it scheduled in the permit of every 2 years finishing a project. So because of the loan delay for Phase 2, we've already had to ask for an extension to move the project deadline for Phase 2 out a year, and we would rather not get ourselves pushed into a corner where we have to get all the remaining phases done in the last few years just before 2030, which would be difficult to take on from a number of aspects, including just the number of neighborhoods we'd be disrupting with that many projects that going on at the same time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you right, that a loan is dependent on this design.
We have to have the design done and approved before we can put in for the loan.
Okay, then that answers the question for me there. I do not want to hold that up. I would, I do want to see that one move forward. So, okay, I guess that's all the questions I have there.
If I can just clarify, then, let's see. Did we have a motion on the floor? We have a motion on the floor to move C, E, and N.
Correct.
Okay.
We do have a motion on the
Yeah,
floor.
I won't vote yes. I would vote no to that one once we get to there.
Okay.
Thank you. We do have some others with their hand raised. Next would be Scott Black.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I'm sorry. I'm very confused. When I heard Jen's initial motion, it was to table all unnecessary, non-essential spending, and then I heard it was going to be about a couple. Can the clerk restate the motion, please?
Yeah, just to clarify, Jamie's requests were the ones that were in order. Item 7C, okay. E, and N. Jen had pulled some for a separate vote afterwards. The one that we have on the floor is to approve, not approve items C, E, and N. So those are the ones that we're dealing with first. That does not preclude us from going further. I would, however, as mayor, just to caution the council, I know we are all trying to be careful, but at the same time, we have to continue to deliver public services. And these are mostly housekeeping chores that we pass without a blink every year. I would hope that in the long term, we don't let, or in the short term, midterm, we don't let things that we would pass that would not be controversial at all become controversial because of a COVID virus. We are required to provide public services to our constituents. And this is not like we're buying champagne bottles for us to sit back and crack open. But anyway, that's my comment. And we have others who want to speak.
Thank you, Terry. Yeah, so my question will be for Tim then, or maybe Jeff. When I hear a motion to disapprove the items, and I'm still confused as to which ones we're talking about, does that mean we have to start the process over, or are we motioning to table them indefinitely to some future date?
Mr. Juergens is going to clarify.
Yeah, so the motion would be actually to deny these three items, so they would not be approved, and the motion is not to table them, as I understand it. It's to actually deny these three items at this point.
Okay, yeah, okay, thank you. It's going to be very important when we do these things that it's kind of hard to hear, and when we're all in the same room, we can hear each other. The motions and such are going to have to be restated very clearly because I think we all had a bit of confusion there.
Okay, just again to clarify, it was Alderman Matthey who asked to pull items 7C, E, and N, and there was a motion and a second to, in a sense, defund those. There will be a second discussion here on the consent agenda items C through G and I through O, but we right now are focusing on C, E, and N. Thank you.
Gotcha. Thank you. I understand. Thank you.
And now Councilmember Crable has his hand up.
Thank you. So I maybe to Scott's point on clarity, if Alderman Carrillo could restate her motion for us, because I thought it was a motion to table.
Just for a second, sorry, Jeff, we have our other Jeff Jurgens, who wants to just clarify, and then we'll move to you, Jen. Our corporate counsel wanted to clarify.
My motion was...
I'm sorry. Did you want to?
Yeah, so if it's a motion to table, then we need to specify that, and whether it's to a date certain or whether it's to not a date certain. But the potential problem with tabling some of these is they're bids, and so the bids are only open for so long. So it may be more effective to simply, if the desire of the council is to deny these, to deny them and allow us to come back, rebid them, go through that process again. I can't sit here and tell you that these prices, these projects are still going to be valid for, another 30 days or so. So certainly we can get clarification on what the motion is, but if you're going to table them to a date certain, just know the impact of that may be to also deny these projects.
Okay, Jen?
Yeah, my motion was to table.
Did you have a table to a date certain or indefinitely?
I would probably say to like our first meeting in April.
Okay.
So
and that was the motion that I made.
Is the seconder okay with that motion? We have a motion to delay this till the first meeting in April. Is there a second to that? Our seconder, Councilmember Craybill, are you okay with that amendment?
Yes, I am, Mayor.
Thank you. At this point, we have a couple other people that want to speak. We're going to have to make this really quick, though, because otherwise we will be here forever. And we have
Councilmember Bray.
Councilmember Bray.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll be voting no to delaying the necessary expenditures that we need to carry out the roles and responsibilities of running city government. So in regards to this idea to table, I'll be voting no. And what is concerning to me is that we have our city manager and staff that we've charged, the professionals who know this space, we've charged them with asking us and helping us and putting forward only things that they need to do in order to accomplish necessary tasks for the public. And they've recommended these expenditures, C, E, and N. And I'm concerned that our workers won't have the needed equipment to complete work. And in addition to that, we won't have the alignment that we need for projects to move forward in an appropriate and cost-effective manner. And I believe that we run the risk here of waste. And what I mean by that is wasting our city resources in the form of our folks having to rework items. And I find it premature to move in a space where we start to table essential city functions of this nature and expenditure. So I'll be voting no to this particular motion. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Bolin.
Yes, I'll be voting no to table, mainly because we've got to get the budget approved in a timely fashion based on statute. And specifically, the Locust Colton combined sewer, those, if you're not aware, is when it rains very hard, it is combined with, it's stormwater and sewage combined sewers. When it rains hard, raw sewage backs up into people's basements. I don't think that we should be tabling this or postponing it. I think this has been a problem for 30 years that needs to be addressed ASAP. I don't think anyone in this room would like that to happen to them.
We have another hand up.
We have another hand up, and we have two hands up. We're going to have to end this. I mean, if you need to make your points as succinctly as possible. I mean, the issue is pretty clear on the table here, because otherwise we will be here forever.
Councilmember Mwambwe.
Councilmember Mwambwe, let's do this as quickly as possible, please. Thank you.
Yes, this is going to be very quick. I just wanted you to, when you restate the motion and we're ready to vote, to let us know what a yes means and also a no means, so that everybody's clear.
Okay, just to clarify, and I'm going to look to Mr. Juergens if I'm stating this correctly, a yes vote would mean that we are tabling to the first meeting in April, items C, E, and N. A no vote would mean that we are not, and we are going ahead with these expenditures that are already budgeted in 2020.
No vote would mean we'd have to come back with a motion to approve those items. So if the motion to table fails, then we'll be open to another motion.
And those may or may not require additional bids.
No, let me clarify. So if the motion to table fails, then we'll need a motion to approve those items.
And that's in April. I'm sorry.
Tonight we'll need. So.
If it fails. Yes. Right. I see.
Gotcha.
Thank you. I apologize.
All right. Last hand up right now is Councilmember Carrillo.
Yes, I have a question for Mr. Kothe, and that question is, if we do not make these expenditures tonight and instead wait until until April, will that actually prevent us from providing any city services?
Mr. Kothe?
Delaying it another meeting, I don't think will.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have an answer. Okay. Anything else, Jen? Questions?
No, that's all. I called the question.
Okay. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Mathey.
No.
Councilmember Boland.
I'm not in favor of tabling.
Councilmember Mwambwe.
No to tabling.
Councilmember Emig.
I am in favor of tabling.
Councilmember Painter.
No.
Councilmember Carrillo.
Yes.
Councilmember Black. Councilmember Black.
No.
Councilmember
No.
Cable.
Yes.
Councilmember Bray.
No.
Okay, the motion fails 6-3, but we would need a motion then to actually approve them.
I make that motion to approve as presented.
Moved by Councilmember Boland. Is there a second to the motion to approve the items C, E, and N?
Councilmember Mathey.
That motion, Mayor.
Thank you very much.
I'll second
Madam Clerk,
that.
would you call the roll?
Councilmember Mathey.
Yes.
Councilmember Boland.
Yes.
Councilmember Mwambwe.
Yes.
Councilmember Emig.
Yes.
Councilmember Painter.
Yes.
Councilmember Carrillo.
No.
Councilmember Black.
Yes.
Councilmember Crable.
No.
Councilmember Bray.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Motion carries 7-2. We move next to items on the consent agenda. Well, we've actually already passed C, so D through G with the exception of E, because that's already passed. And then I through O, with the exception of N, that's already passed. So those are the items that all Councilmember Carrillo has pulled, and I'm going to go ahead and turn to Councilmember Carrillo, and you have the floor, Jen, if you can hear.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can I interrupt for
I
just a
too
second?
do not want to be here forever. I don't think the point needs belaboring, but again, any constituents I'm talking to right now aren't talking about buying new cars. They are talking about how they can set money aside to make sure that they can make rent this month. And I think that the city has a responsibility, you know, whether these were accounted for in our current budget or not, to think about all the possible ways that we can preserve any money that's not being spent on the core essential services like public safety, fire safety, et cetera, because people are going to need our help, and I'm going to continue urging my colleagues to heed that call. So I will make the motion to table the remaining items.
Is that to a time certain?
First meeting in, let's do the end of April, the last meeting in April.
Okay, to delay these items that you have mentioned, D through G with the exception of E, which has passed, and I through O with the exception of N that has passed, through the last meeting in April. So the motion is to table these expenditures to the last meeting in April. Is there a second?
Councilmember Crable, you have the floor.
Second.
Okay. At this point, we, Alderman Black wants to speak, and then I think we can call the question because I think it's a similar issue. Madam Clerk, if you put on Councilmember Black. Scott?
Yeah, I am unmuted. Okay, cool. I'm just confused. So the other three motions could wait until the first meeting in April, but these can wait longer. What is the rationale between the two differences between these motions?
Councilmember Carrillo, I think that's a question directly for you from Councilmember Black.
Yeah, sure, nothing. I panicked and said the beginning of April when I meant to say the end of April in my last motion, and so I'm just correcting myself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. I understand, and you know, things are all over the map here. I'm hearing some of the same comments. I think it's incredibly important that we remain thoughtful about how we spend city dollars, and when we table things because it feels good, without getting kind of the ramifications of those decisions, it's hard for me to support those sorts of things. So I look forward to approving these, assuming this motion were to fail.
Okay, thank you. And just to clarify, many of these are things like an agreement with Farnsworth Group and engineering services and many things to move forward with many projects that are in the process of unfolding. Okay, we have two comments, and we're going to need to be quick because I think this is the same issue.
Councilmember Crable, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. So how I look at this is that we are tabling this, and this will allow us to determine the scope of the crisis that we're facing. If none of these items, spending items on the agenda tonight, were not on the agenda, I don't think anybody in the community or on council would be saying, why aren't we paying for these things? So I don't think that waiting a month is an inordinate amount of time to look and see how the crisis goes. I certainly appreciate the staff's opinion on this as well as other council members, but I think waiting is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bray.
Yes, thank you. I'll echo the comments I made previously and simply say that we're charged with the roles and responsibilities of running the city government. And it is our responsibility to carry on, to keep calm, and to act in a professional manner. And stopping that responsibility and abdicating that responsibility is not something we should do. And so I'll be voting against these initiatives that pause or cause us again to waste our resources and our time, because we have a lot of things we do need to focus on, and I'd like us to get to those issues. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have somebody else. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Boland.
The items that have been pulled for discussion, to be tabled, these are all infrastructure, and I don't know how many times people come to public comment and emails that we get as council members. Number one priority is infrastructure. That is the job of the city, to provide infrastructure to the best of our ability. If we see in the near future that we cannot afford it because of the COVID-19, we can always take that item off the agenda. We are going to be flexible, we are going to be nimble, and that's how I want to move forward.
Thank you. And we have one last, is that Councilmember Carrillo?
Correct.
Councilmember Carrillo, you have the last word, and then we're going to vote.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you had asked me a couple of months ago, I probably would have said that infrastructure was at the top of my list of priorities. At this point, my number one priority is making sure that my constituents and the residents of the city of Bloomington do not lose their businesses, can stay in their homes, do not get sick, and do not die. And that is my number one priority.
Point of order.
And so I will just call the question and have us.
Excuse me, we do have what's the point of order? We have a point of order that I have to rule on this, Jen. I'm sorry. A point of order.
Point of order. We're talking about infrastructure. We're not talking about.
I think
you can't call a point of order because you disagree with my point. That's not a point of order.
Okay.
Well, Jen does not rule on public order.
Disagreeing with my point is not a point of order.
Okay,
I am not out of order.
Okay, just and I do as long as you're saying just clarifying that it the point that you were making in contrast to infrastructure, I don't think there's. I will rule in your favor. Go ahead, finish your point, Jen, and then we're going to vote.
I want to call the question.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll? Again, a yes vote on this is to table the expenditures until the end of April. Again, this was the latter part of the consent agenda. And if this fails, then we do need a motion to approve these expenditures.
Councilmember Mathey.
No.
Councilmember Boland.
No.
Councilmember Milawambwe.
No.
Councilmember Emig.
Yes.
Councilmember Painter.
No.
Councilmember Carrillo.
Yes.
Councilmember Black.
No.
Councilmember Crable.
Yes.
Councilmember Bray.
No.
Okay, the motion is defeated 6-3. Is there a motion to approve the expenditures as presented?
I make that motion to approve as presented.
Moved by Councilmember Boland. Is there a second to that motion made by Councilmember Boland?
Councilmember Mathey.
Mayor, I'll second that.
Okay. At this point, if we can go ahead and, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll? This motion then is yes would be to move ahead with the items as presented.
Would you like me to clarify? So that's 7D, 7F, 7G, 7I, 7J, 7K, 7L, 7M, and 7O.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Mathey.
Yes.
Councilmember Boland.
Yes.
Councilmember Milawambwe.
Yes.
Councilmember Emig.
Yes.
Councilmember Painter.
Yes.
Councilmember Carrillo.
No.
Councilmember Black? Hold on one second. Sorry, Councilmember Black. There you go. Councilmember Black?
Yes.
Councilmember Crable?
No.
Councilmember Bray?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 7-2. We are done with the consent agenda, and we are going to move forward now to our regular agenda. And the first item on the regular agenda is consideration and action on an ordinance amending Chapter 12 of the City Code on Emergency Management. We have budgeted a 5-minute presentation by the city manager and a 5-minute discussion by the council. If we go much beyond that with the council, I will need to have a motion to extend that. Not that I'm anticipating that, but just to clarify. Mr. Gleason, if we can turn this over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This document, 8A, was formerly on the published Monday night council agenda, was 7W. And in my opinion, this document, while 40-plus years old, it's a good document. What we did entering this pandemic, this crisis, we knew that we needed to update a little bit of the language, which very small cleanup. But the one thing that I should have said, and I was going to say it before the 9B, former 9B agenda item was actually called, was about an elected body in a time of crisis. You've got a broad-ranging code. Ours is Chapter 12, and it allows for the council to tweak to fit the emergency that we're going through. So a broad Chapter 12 in code is a good document, and then you'll see the next item is one where we strike some items. But what's before council tonight, a couple of minor changes to Chapter 12 for consideration by council, and we pulled it, moved it to the regular agenda.
And if you could, Mr. Gleason, if you could clarify very briefly, or maybe Mr. Juergens, what we're doing under item A and as opposed to B, and the slight differences there. I don't know, Mr. Juergens, maybe if you could just clarify.
Thank you, Mayor. So item 8A is basically just updating old statutory references in Chapter 12. So it used to be called, you know, the Emergency Services and Disaster Agency Act of 1975. We're basically updating that to the Illinois Emergency Management Agency Act. And we've also added a penalty provision in there. This is just, as the city manager said, basically cleaning up the statutory references within Chapter 12. Item 8B is actually when we're going to get to declaring or considering declaring a local emergency ordinance. And that will have some, you know, references to Chapter 12, but as the city manager said, we are not going to be allowing or exercising all of the Chapter 12 powers. So this item in front of the council right now, 8A, is just updating those statutory references in Chapter 12.
Thank you very much. Council members, any either comments or a motion?
Councilmember Bray would like to speak. You have the floor.
Thank you, City Clerk. Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that we pass item 8A as presented.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Bray, second by Councilmember Boland. Any further discussion before we vote on the first one? Again, this doesn't preclude, we're not done. We go to item 8B to talk about the implementation, just so that we clarify. Okay, I don't see any. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Mathey?
Yes.
Councilmember Boland?
Yes.
Councilmember Milwambwe?
Yes.
Councilmember Emig?
Yes.
Councilmember Painter?
Yes.
Councilmember Carrillo?
Yes.
Councilmember Black?
Yes.
Councilmember Crable?
Yes.
And Councilmember Bray?
Yes.
We have a unanimous vote, 9-0. Okay, now we move to item 8B, consideration and action on an ordinance declaring a local emergency due to the COVID virus and enacting various emergency measures as requested by the legal department. And I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Gleason and perhaps Mr. Juergens, depending on how you want to allocate the time. Mr. Gleason.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is exactly the example that I was talking about previously, where this is the formal emergency declaration. And unlike the document that was published on Monday night where we were going to make this proposal, we actually struck some items. And what I'm going to do here in a minute is I'm going to have Jeff Juergens walk through exactly what we were talking about in the emergency declaration. But little did I know some of the public concerns over some of the language that was in that original document. So that's why we were going to change on the floor on Monday night. With the couple of days that we've had because of the technical difficulties, we've got a slightly different document to bring before council tonight. One thing that we also did, some of the concerns that we were also hearing is just the mayor and the city manager having this authority. We've added, and I think that we have the ability in this crisis, that we've added an extra layer, an extra checks and balance in the form of Alderman Milawamboy that serves as the Mayor Pro Tem. And then also, we took an extra step with this as well, that if something happens to me, I think it's obvious that Deputy City Manager Tyus would be the next in line, but we went a third deep. And if something would happen with Deputy City Manager Tyus, our corporate counsel, Jeff Juergens, would be the lead for the organization. And I'm going to turn this over to Jeff right now. And Jeff, I'd like you just to walk through everything that council's considering. Thanks.
Thank you, City Manager. And to start, I would say, the question is why move forward with an emergency declaration ordinance? And really this does two different things. First, it ensures the continuity of city government and services. So it ensures that we can continue providing services to the community, whether they be fire, police, paramedics, garbage pickup, water, sewer, those types of services. We want to make sure that we are able to continue providing those services to the public. And then it also, this ordinance starts to lay the groundwork for providing some relief to the residents and the small businesses. What this ordinance does not do is it does not give the mayor or anybody else the power to stop gun sales, to ration gas. It does not give the mayor or anybody else the power to stop ammunition sales or to do some of the things that there's been concern with. Those powers are specifically disallowed, and as the city manager said, we do not foresee needing them in this crisis, and therefore we have specifically disallowed them as part of this local declaration. What this ordinance does do is set forth various emergency powers in terms of the ability to cancel meetings, just clarified that the mayor can cancel meetings where necessary. This is something that we've already done with quite a few meetings as we've tried to make sure that we're keeping to under 10 people, that we've got the right electronic equipment to hold meetings electronically, those types of things. Sub B is just that, the ability to conduct electronic meetings. The governor signed an executive order number 5 that is allowing this type of meeting to occur tonight due to the public health crisis. Currently, no more than 10 people can be at a gathering. It would be nearly impossible for the city to conduct business if we were not able to have this type of remote meeting. So this just kind of clarifies and reaffirms that we're going to be having these types of electronic meetings. Subsection C talks about that the city manager can address various contract, permitting, and licensing issues. However, as the city manager said, we added some checks and balances to this so that to do that, he has to have the written concurrence or the approval of both the mayor and the mayor pro tem. This may include things like stopping solicitation permits, doing various things. Maybe a license needs to be canceled, but it's not going to be done unilaterally. There is going to be the checks and balances of having the mayor and the mayor pro tem involved in those issues. Subsection D allows emergency purchases, and we already have a pretty strong emergency purchase provision in our city code, so we just reference back to that. Basically says that in a bona fide emergency, the city manager can make a purchase over $50,000. However, that has to be reported back by the city manager to the city council at the next city council meeting. Subsection E allows the city manager to make certain decisions regarding personnel policies and union contracts on a temporary and an emergency basis. Subsection F talks about facility closures and just reaffirms the city manager's authority to do that. We already have provisions in our city code that authorize, that provide the city managers responsible for the city buildings, and so you saw the city manager execute an executive order last week that closed facilities. This is just reaffirming that ability to do so. Subsection G talks about the ability to suspend the city's administrative court. Subsection H, this is part of the relief that would be granted to residents and small businesses. It places a moratorium on interest, fines, and or penalties for amounts that were due as of March 1, 2020 for city utility payments, so basically water payments, water and sewer payments, food and beverage taxes, and parking tickets or ordinance violations. So as long as those payments are paid to the city within 30 days after the governor's emergency declaration ends, no interest will be charged and no penalties will be assessed on those amounts owed to the city. So providing a little bit of extra relief to the residents and some of the small businesses in those situations. Subsection I provides that the city manager can authorize the issuance of payments to city vendors, contractors, and utilities if the city council is unable to meet at its regularly scheduled date. And this is really kind of a worst case scenario if we have people that are ill and not able to attend, we don't have a quorum. This would just authorize the city manager to make those necessary payments, and then he would report on that at the next meeting. Subsection J provides for a moratorium on water shutoffs, so no shutoffs will be paid while this or shutoffs will be made while this ordinance is in effect for non-payment. Subsection K provides that the city can authorize or is authorized to accept applications for city licenses and permits electronically, that the city can also accept other documentation electronically. So this is kind of some relief to our businesses because some of our requirements are that you might have to provide an original, sketch or something that goes along with a license or a variation application or something like this. This will allow us in this interim emergency period to accept those types of documents electronically, designed to help keep city business going and allow our businesses to keep conducting businesses. Subsection L provides for some loosening of our written public comment rules. We already have a provision in our city code that allows people to submit written public comment. It is not used very often, and because of kind of some of the technical difficulties with that, the written comments are supposed to be provided 24 hours in advance. Obviously, we've already loosened that, but by approval of this, the city manager can issue an executive order that says, that the written comment has to be provided at least maybe 5 minutes before the meeting so that we can get those printed out and provided. This is just, again, trying to make sure that we've got public engagement as we get into this new era of having electronic meetings. So this is just going to allow some flexibility and encouragement to people to participate in our meetings. M is allowing some additional approvals for site plans, for grant applications, for historic preservation grants that will be allowed so that we can continue to, again, process some various things as long as the city manager and the director of the Department of Community Development agree on those. These are things that do not require public hearings by law, so we would just allow them to be approved administratively, again with the idea of allowing as much business to continue within the city as possible. Subsection N basically reaffirms and will allow to a greater extent, without it having to be reissued every 48 hours, that the mayor as liquor commissioner can allow restaurants and taverns within the city to provide curbside pickup and delivery of packaged alcoholic liquor. This is something that's proven to be very important to our restaurants and bars within the city that have had to close basically because of the governor's orders and because of the health pandemic that's going on. This allows them to continue making money during the crisis. Finally, subsection O provides for the city manager the ability to execute intergovernmental agreements that may be necessary for us to fight COVID-19 and the related crisis, maybe to partner with our other governmental agencies around the area to provide services and that type of thing. As the city manager said, this also allows succession planning already in our code, that if the mayor is unable to act, the mayor pro tem will act, but then also it clarifies what happens if the city manager is unable to act. Section 5 does the formal declaration of a local emergency, and then again, Section 3 is that provision that says that the other emergency powers in Chapter 12, such as the prohibiting the sale of liquor, prohibiting the sale of guns, prohibiting the sale of gas, or rationing gas, prohibiting the sale of ammo, is specifically disallowed. So I would again reiterate that nobody within the community needs to be concerned about those powers being enacted. I would say that this is very similar to, it's tweaked a little bit for things going on within the city and our needs, but this is very similar to the documents that have been approved and the emergency declarations that have been approved by a number of other communities, including Champaign, Urbana, Peoria, Normal, Springfield, Decatur, Danville. So again, this is in line with what a lot of our neighboring communities are doing, but tweaked a little bit for the city of Bloomington. I would also say we've been, in my opinion, one of the leaders in terms of making sure that we've got some extra checks and balances within our document. And again, we believe that's something that this emergency does allow for, and so we want to give that assurance to our residents. With that, I don't have anything further.
Thank you so much, Mr. Juergens. That was very effective. And just to clarify, these are all systems maintenance kinds of functions, and we are not, once again, we are not limiting and are not going down the path of limiting firearms, alcohol, tobacco, any of the kinds of things that may have existed in other emergency documents. So this is primarily systems maintenance to allow for administrative efficiency and effectiveness. Okay. It's our clerk. We do have a member Bray, I believe.
Correct. Go ahead, Councilmember
Yes,
Bray.
thank you, Mayor Renner and City Clerk. I'd like to make a motion to approve the item as presented. I want to thank the city manager and the city attorney for their due diligence in customizing this to the needs of our community.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Bray. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Councilmember Black.
Councilmember Black?
That is a second, yes.
That is a second. Okay. Any further comments? Any comments on this other than the motion and the second? It's hard for me to see what that... They're both. Okay. Would you call the roll then, Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Mathey.
Yes.
Councilmember Bolin.
Yes.
Councilmember Milwambwe.
Yes.
Councilmember Emig.
Yes.
Councilmember Painter.
Yes.
Councilmember Carrillo.
Yes.
Councilmember Black. Let's try that again.
Mr. Millennial.
Hold on one second.
I said yes, sorry.
Okay,
Oh,
sorry,
okay.
we just didn't hear it. Thank you.
Yes. Apologies.
Councilmember Crable.
Yes.
Councilmember Bray.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries 9-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk. We move right along to item 8C on our regular agenda, and that's consideration and action on a resolution calling on the state of Illinois and the United States federal government to pass immediate and effective economic relief programs in relation to the COVID virus as requested by the legal department. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Gleason, and then we have a brief council discussion. Mr. Gleason.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Actually, this resolution, credit goes to Alderman Black, and I think he's been talking to a number of the peers that he serves with. And what we did as staff is we created this resolution, and basically the title of the resolution calling on the state of Illinois and the United States federal government to pass immediate and effective economic relief programs in relation to COVID-19. It's a good document, but what we've seen since this was initially crafted late last week and placed in the original agenda, we're seeing some of those being stood up. But we felt it appropriate to continue and bring it to the floor of the council to act on for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gleason. Council members, Councilmember Boland.
I'll make a motion to accept as presented.
Motion made by Councilmember Boland to accept as presented. Is there a second to that motion before we begin discussion?
Councilmember Black?
I shall second.
Okay. Thank you. Shall seconding. Okay. We have, let's see.
Councilmember Crable.
Crable to speak.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. So I guess my question is, I mean, is this more symbolic, or are we going to kind of present this resolution so that our federal representatives and our state representatives know about this?
I think it's more symbolic, but we are going to definitely present. I mean, I think it's both. It is us taking a stand, but I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gleason. I would certainly be presenting this and have been asked to present things like this to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and we can certainly to the Illinois Municipal League and others, but I will turn this over to Mr. Gleason to clarify that from his perspective.
It actually, Alderman Crable, very last sentence, the city clerk shall be directed to send a copy of this resolution to all of our local, state, and federal elected representatives, if passed.
Sorry, I missed that. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Councilmember Boland, did you have a? Okay.
Councilmember Black would like to speak.
Councilmember Black.
Thank you. I couldn't hear quite what Tim was saying, but thank you, Tim, for putting this on the agenda. I know this is something that a lot of us have talked about and is a first step. And just also wanted to thank you, Tim, as well, and Jeff, for all the questions you've been fielding from us regarding direct economic relief and how that might work from a city perspective. So this is the first step. And then as we do more research, and I appreciate you guys fielding those questions and digging in, I think that we're doing all we can for our residents here in Bloomington.
Thank you very much. And we did have a motion and a second. At this point, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Matthey? Councilmember Matthey? Councilmember Boland?
Yes.
Councilmember Mulambwe?
Yes.
Councilmember Emig?
Yes.
Councilmember Painter?
Yes.
Councilmember Carrillo?
Yes.
Councilmember Black? Councilmember Black?
Yes.
Councilmember Crable?
Yes.
Councilmember Bray?
Yes.
Councilmember Matthey? Councilmember Matthey?
Okay, the motion carries. Thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and move to our Finance Director's report, and I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Gleason.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is the monthly Finance Director's report. I've got Scott Rathman that's called in for the presentation, but I guess I've got some opening comments. What I directed Scott to do regarding this was no different than what he's done in the past. Walk us through where we are this month. Well, between this month and last month, there's a few things that have changed. And I want to share with everyone that while this is not a discussion about FY21, which we're still trying to keep that on track, but that could change, in the next couple of weeks. But at least at this point, we're trying to stay the course is what our recommendation is regarding FY21. But I want to share, because I think the elected already are aware of this, but more so for the community's sake, you've got a finance team that is very much tracking what the IML is talking about with revenue projections going forward. The same thing out of Department of Revenue at the state. Billy Tias, Deputy City Manager, and I, and Jeff Juergens, there are a number of us trying to just find anything regarding what the revenue projections are. So that's occurring. So I just did say that as far as FY21, trying to stay the course, at least that's a recommendation today that, again, could change in a couple of weeks before we meet again on April 13th. But you've got staff over there, and I would say, and Scott can correct me when he's got the mic, but I think Chris Tomerlin, a budget manager for Scott, is the one that truly is looking at items in our FY21 budget if we hit a worst case scenario. So looking at a sustained event, is something that we're trying to prepare for, absent a crystal ball, as best we can. We do also know that we've got cash reserves, and that's exactly, to stay the course and provide the, the ongoing, the continuity of government. Those cash reserves also assist with that. But we don't think that we are at that point yet. But I guess I want to assure everybody in the community that we're on it. We're looking, we've got our ear to the ground trying to make sure that, we hear the most recent news. So what I've directed Scott to do is simply present what a normal presentation would have looked like absent COVID-19. So Scott, are you on the line?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Very good. Well, the city manager mentioned a couple of things I was going to close with, but I just wanted to start off by saying that while we're not in the office, the finance department is definitely open for business. I wanted to assure the community that accounts payable, we have the functions, the processes in place, mails being distributed, employees being processed. We want to make sure that our vendors are not going to, yes? Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks, Scott.
Okay. We just want to make sure that our vendors won't be suffering from any cash flow due to us. So accounts payable is being run on schedule. After council here, we'll be getting those out. We're reviewing, as city manager said, we're doing all backup options for 21. But for tonight, February was a very consistent month with prior months. Fortunate to say that if you look at the FY20 budget variance column and the prior year-to-date variance columns, the same categories that were consistently over budget in prior months are over budget still in this month. This is going to help us with the current situation. The total that we're ahead of budget for 20 for these major tax revenues is approximately $1.3 million. So that gives us a little breathing room to take some time and assess this current situation, check with our advisors, check with the Department of Revenue. We have a contact there on the timing and the delays of our revenues, and really, take a moment to make a solid plan before we move on. Next screen, please. So consistent with the message for the night, we have not adjusted as of yet the projection for year end. So similar to last month, drawing your attention to that projected year end column. Last month we were estimating that we were going to actually add $1 million to fund balance for the year. so that we'd end up with approximately $23 million. Now we know, revenues are going to take a bit of a hit. Food and beverage is being delayed due to closures. Video gaming was put on hold. Some of the sales tax revenues are going to be delayed from the state. But some of our expenses are going to go down too because unfortunately we're having to put some programs on hold. So we want to do a full assessment of that. But I guess what I want to say and the message I want to convey is similar to the first screen is we had that $1 million projected to add to fund balance from the prior month. That, along with our strong reserve from the end of last year, gives us the opportunity, the benefit of time a little bit. Now, we know time is of the essence with this. Things are moving quickly, but we don't want to make a mistake and make any rash decisions. And unfortunately, we've had the first 10 months of the year were very positive results for us, and that's provided us that opportunity. Now, we don't have an enterprise fund exhibit for the night. Our staff was a little bit in flux as we settled into our remote offices. So that exhibit has not been completed yet. So we'll get that back on the agenda for next month. And that is it. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Scott. Questions? Councilmember Boland.
The only question I have is, what does the ordinance say as far as how much money needs to stay in reserve?
Well, I don't think we have an ordinance for that, but the standing city policy is there's a range that's mentioned in the budget book, and that's 10 to 15% of annual expenditures. The GFOA recommendation is 18%, or 2 months. That's 18% of expenditures. So out of $110 million, that's roughly $18 million in reserve.
Okay, thank you.
And we're well above that.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Other questions? Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Gleason.
Thank you, Scott. I think we have one slide, no events slide, but we have just a reminder slide on the census. I know I got mine last week and have already filled it out. This is a critical moment in time. If we were talking about this before, and I know our partners are the town of Normal, McLean County, but if it's even more critical, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm going to shift and just talk about some of the things that are occurring here at City Hall and within the city. Honestly, there's so much that could be said. I know we're an hour and a half into this meeting, but I could probably talk for another hour and a half.
No.
And no, I'm not, and I promise. But also, if you think about it, we're only about a week and a half into this event. I think we were prepping for it, knew it was coming our way a couple of weeks ago. But before, some of the things that we've done, we're still fully operational. The continuity of government is a critical function that we want our residents to rest assured is continuing. We also know that we have a strong obligation to make sure that the resources, at this time where people are concerned about what's going to happen next. Some people that miss a paycheck, the impacts. So as state and federal programs, as local 501c3s, like what the United Way has done to address some of the unmet needs in various items, it's critical for me to make sure that that's in your hands. And then also talking points, a script, and it's entirely up to the council to follow that, but that's an obligation that we have as staff for our elected official at all times, but even more so in a time like this. One of the things last week, on Friday, and it would have been more timely if I would have shared this on Monday night at that council meeting, but I sent this to the directors, which we meet every single day virtually at 8:30 in the morning to talk about them individually as a director, their departments, and some of the functions that we have. But I sent this to the director and was encouraged to share this tonight, so I'm going to. This is what I said. And again, this would have been Friday evening. Amazing week when you think about what we accomplished for our staff, the elected officials, and the community. Hopefully we can find some stability in this phase of the pandemic with a low peak and eventual recovery. What happened this week is exactly what we expected. We expected a first case at some point. We expected more shutdowns at the state level with the governor's executive order. We expected a work from home, not directive, but it came from us, and we sent 200 plus employees to work from home. We dealt with a couple of exposures that weren't confirmed cases, but they were, we had the luxury that we treated them with extra caution and reached out to the additional employees that might have had some of that exposure, and I believe totally the right move on our part. 3-4 weeks from now, we might not have that luxury like some of the different communities around the United States. But the biggest thing is, we truly, at a time that a community of only 80,000, I mean, no stress or pressure, but we've got 80,000 residents that look to us for calm, and at the very least, direction, communicating exactly what the city is doing. So we manage the message. And then also, in large part, we control the chaos. And that is exactly what the directors and the city employees have done. They truly have stepped up, and they're a group to be proud of. And there's more to come. I get it, but we've got a plan. And if that plan somehow goes bad, we'll adjust, and we know that we've got a backup plan. So I could talk more, and I am not going to. One thing that I do also want to say, because I think it's important, is McLean County, Camille Rodriguez, the county administrator. Talking to her quite often, she's excellent, strong leader for the county. And then at the town of Normal, you've got Pam Reese. All three of us talk quite often. We actually have a scheduled teleconference tomorrow. So when I talk about the city of Bloomington, really, this is a united front, and it has to be. So very proud of the employees that I work with, the elected that I serve. This is a great community, and we'll get through this, I promise.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gleason. And you're absolutely right. We were on a conference call this past Friday with our key intergovernmental and not just our intergovernmental leaders, but many of our private sector leaders, including Illinois Westland, Illinois State, Heartland, St. Joe's, Bromen. What are we all doing? What are we going to be doing next? You're absolutely right, and I thank you very much for your leadership and your work on this, and thank you so much for your report. And I just wanted to say that, as Mr. Gleason had noted, we are still at the beginning of this situation, this crisis, but we have acted this evening to help ease the burden on our citizens and many of our businesses. And the question going forward isn't whether or not we're going to do more. Of course we're going to be doing more. We're going to be on top of this, and we're going to do more to help our citizens and our most vulnerable citizens as we move forward. So again, I want to thank you, and I want to thank all the council members as well as the staff for all of what they've done. We all know that we're all trying to help the citizens of our community. That's what we are elected or appointed to do, and I'm very proud of the efforts that we've taken so far.
Mayor, we just have Councilmember Bray.
Councilmember Bray.
Thank you for those comments. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn by Alderwoman Bray, seconded by Councilmember Boland. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
I actually just unmuted everyone, if you'd just like to do it by voice.
Apparently everybody's unmuted.
Yes.
Aye.
Oh.
Aye.
Are there
Aye.
nays? Thank you very much.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you all so much for your patience and diligence in this. We're adjourned.